Right here in this room, about 5 years ago, the Senior Center sponsored a presidential candidate. He wasn't a presidential candidate back in those days. He was a United States Senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. And I had the good fortune to come with my brother-in-law and hear Senator Sanders and to ask him a question. The amazing thing about New Hampshire and Vermont is you can actually talk to your representatives, your political leaders, and ask them questions. And they listen, and they give you an answer. Certainly, Senator Sanders. I asked him, can we do something with this administration about Crystal Lake Falls? When there was mechanical hydropower there in the 1800s, this was a thriving area. People had jobs. There were shops. Can we do something? And he said, this administration is in favor of renewable energy, and hydropower is that kind of energy. And I look forward to you doing it. And Dr. Ben Luce came up and gave me a card, and we've been in touch ever since. So, I'd like to thank the Senior Center, Brenda and Frank and their wonderful leadership and all they do, for hosting that kind of program, for a continuing involvement with seniors in this area and a continuing public service to this area, not the least of which was this delicious dinner that we just had. Can we give them a great round of applause? Brenda, take a bow. Where are you? All right, well, when she comes back, we'll ask her to take a bow. I've been inspired with a dream. Whenever I go into Brown's on a hot summer day and that new display room that they have open, where they have plumbing and electrical stuff in it, if the window's open, I hear this coming from Crystal Lake Falls, and I say, why aren't we tapping it? That's a village resource. And so my dream is that we will tap it, and we'll use it to assist everybody in the village. Lower utility rates for the young people to have an opportunity, if they graduate from high school, to go on to trade school or college, to be a resource, to be an income source, to be a power source for powering up the future generation as well as helping this generation. We're fortunate tonight to have a man who knows how to do that backwards and forwards. We have an engineer who's a specialist in hydropower. He's so specialized that he owns two dams in Vermont, down in Heartland area. He also has been a leader in that area in Windsor with a historic museum that looks sort of like the Smithsonian and was founded by somebody from the Smithsonian. So he has great respect for the history that is represented by Crystal Lake Falls and what that represents to a town, a village, and its own sense of themselves. He's done about 40 of these economic feasibility studies. He even has challenged people in other states to follow or step up to come in a more renewable energy way. So, without further ado, it's with great pride that I introduce a great engineer, Jay Boeri, who I'm proud to say I feel has become a friend. And I look forward to him becoming a friend of Barton. Jay Boeri.
Take autograph?
I came from Vermont 40 years ago with my young family. I was an engineer, moved to Heartland. I had a trade, but I didn't have a job. And so you find what work you can. And at the time, in the late 1970s, hydro was just beginning. So I worked for a person, and then did work in the, people football, and then you do more work. And so, for me, hydro was snowballed in the last 30 years. I probably worked on 40 different projects, and I own 2 projects, one in Highland and one in Northwood. And both projects produced about enough for maybe 4 or 5 houses. So, on the other hand, besides the technical side, I'm a curator of the Historical Society. I'm an enthusiast in the hydro world. I write histories of water power projects. Maybe 20 years ago, I came to Barton. I heard you had a lovely site here, so I came. My wife was understanding. She let me take a little side trip, and I walked down through the brook, down through the kingdom. And I just remembered it. And I heard this was a feasibility study, this just didn't happen. So I signed up for it and was selected.
Can you speak up? Folks are having a hard time hearing you.
How's that?
That's better.
Get a hold of both of you.
When people ask you to do hydro studies, you can be an enthusiast, and that's wonderful. But you need to be tempered by having experience running projects. If you're in the hydro world, you're outside in the winter, you're in books and with ice cakes around you, you have machinery that breaks down. So you don't take it lightly when you recommend that somebody do this project. So when I started on this job, I had a very open mind based on things that I had done. I walked up and down probably 6 times in the last 6 months. It was a little difficult because of the weather. I read the reports. There were two reports on hydro projects, 1984 and 1985. I just wanted to see what people had done or thought about in the past. I'm also a member of the Vermont Independent Power Association, and we know what the rates are. So you can have a good project that is a good physical project, a nice location, the right drop of water, the right flow, but you also need the energy rates. And sometimes a good project, like the Brick Kingdom, that's not going anywhere. That's going to be here for a long time. But it needs to wait for the opportunity for a good rate. So if you have a good project and you have a good rate, then there's a good likelihood that you could have a successful project. But you have to have both. Rates come and go. In the 1980s, with a turn towards renewable energy, the state promoted rates, that is energy rates, that were very attractive. And so over the course of 5 years, there were 25 independent power projects built, very similar to what could happen here in the kingdom. After a while, the state said no more rates. And for 20 years, there was no rates, good rates, until 2008. And then it sort of started to creep back. There are 2 projects in North Troy and Newport have come about because the state created a new rate that worked for those larger projects. Coming back to Barton, the first thing I looked at to see what the problems were, what would stop, or what were the issues that would stop a project. And there are 3 that I found. One is, that you may know, that state owns the dam and the state owns the water rights. In 1966, the dam that was there, I guess it was partly a wooden timber grid and masonry, it was in need of repairs. And in 1966, the state came to Barton. They held a public hearing. And at the public hearing, it was decided that the public interest would be served by the state taking the property. So the state bought the property and bought the water rights. And ever since then, they've obviously taken care of it and put some money into it. There's a similar situation in Windsor. In the 1960s, there was a small utility that was getting out of that business. And for $1, they sold the dam to the town of Windsor. It was the town of Windsor's... What? It was the town of Windsor's swing. Light? Okay.
Just keep the mic close to you.
Sorry, how's that? I got
There you go.
Get it right up there.
So the town of Windsor bought a dam for $1. A wonderful thing. Kids swam there, people canoed there, people fished there, a great thing. And then the dam started to deteriorate. So their $1 investment now in the last 2 years has cost them $4 million in maintenance and upkeep of the dam. So you really don't want to own a dam that's that has liability or maintenance issues. So this is very important. So how can you get water that the state owns over a state dam without assuming that liability? And I thought about that for a while, and you can't buy the dam, but you need to use it. So one way is by leasing the water rights. The only way that any project will work in the kingdom is if you're able to lease water rights from the state of Vermont. But like everything else, there's always a catch. The catch, one of them, and not such a big one, is the governor has to approve any lease arrangements for state property. And once a lease arrangement is accepted, it only lasts 10 years. So every 10 years it has to be renewed. So it's an issue, and it has to be dealt with right off. No water, no hydro, so someone has to look into the fact, is the state of Vermont interested in leasing you, the town, the village, or whoever the developer of the project wants to be. The second issue is this dam liability issue. And that, again, is you don't want to be like the town of Windsor and look at a $4 or $5 million repair fee in your lifetime. So my idea was not to use the dam. But if everybody here knows what a siphon is, a siphon is if you didn't have gasoline and you needed chainsaw gas, you put a little pipe in the tank of your car and you'd suck on it and gravity would then take over and away you'd go and you'd get your gasoline out. Well, hydros are the same way. There's something called a siphon intake. And that would be a pipe that would be in the outlet pond above the dam, and that pipe would be inserted more or less into the pool, but it wouldn't touch the dam, and water would then come probably under the West Street Bridge. It would go down a little bit, and then it would head over to the powerhouse location. So the point is there are workarounds. They're not particularly elegant ones, but there's a way to solve the problem, and how successful they be, we'll hold on to that part. So that's the first issue, is how to use the dam, how to get the state to cooperate. The second issue that's very critical is how much water that has to be maintained in the brook or in the river between the dam and down to the Chronicle or wherever power would be produced. And that's called a bypass flow. Bypass flows, well, let me digress here. Bring this over. I want to come to this map. Can everybody see this map?
Yeah, pop right into that.
Yeah, I know. You gotta move the chair. Everybody know where you are? There's West Street, Main Street, Water Street. Museum is, where are you down here? It's down here. Everybody know where you are? Okay. What this map is that after the Civil War, almost every town in Vermont had one insurance carrier, and it was Sanborn Insurance. So they were gonna insure every building, everybody's mill, everything, but they wanted a map of what was there. So they created a set of maps. Now on the maps, they would have the building location, they would have, was there a night watchman, how many fire buckets did they have, how much hose did they have, and so every 10 years they upgraded this map. And so you can see development every 10 years from the Civil War to about 1930. So what I did was I found the maps and from the Vermont Historical Society, and I pieced them together. So what this is a map of, this is exactly all the building owners, the functions, turbines, what they made, and at the time of probably the kingdom's maximum build-out, about 1910. And I wanted to put it over on this so people could see if there was going to be a project there, how would it lay out? How would it not disturb the buildings that are there? And so here we are. This is the state dam. The lines in red are the dams. There were 6 dams. 5 are still there. State dam, dam just below West Street, one midway through, sort of in back of Browns, and then here's the footbridge that crosses over into the kingdom, and there's a dam, and right in back of the Historical Association, there's another dam. Still there, it's in pieces, not necessarily usable, because you don't want to, when you do a hydro, put a turbine here, and a turbine here, and a turbine here, and a turbine here, and one here. It doesn't make any economic sense. So what you want to do is, you want to come back up here to the state dam, or not quite the state dam, because you need to stay away from that dam, or you will incur the liability of it. So one would run a pipe. It would come here, it would sort of weave in and out of the foundation buildings, and it would end up with a very small powerhouse that's in back of the Historical Society. Now, I'm not standing here like I own the property and I'm saying, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. My job isn't to look at the individual owners. My job from the village was what works in the kingdom. So I'm looking at the whole pie, not how the pie is divided between the owners, because the state owns this, E.B. Brown owns this, Historical Association down here owns it. So all I can do is present a plan that, okay, here's the plan that works the best. Do you want to participate? I don't know the answer to the question. That's not my job. My job is to say what works, and then other people can determine, hey, do they want to participate or not? If they do, great. If they don't, then the project dies. So that's sort of the second problem or the third problem about the difficulty in coming up with a project, just the physical aspects of it. Nothing to do with the economics. That's the last part of the story. So everybody with me? You know where I'm going? Two different plans. I call them A, B, and C.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm trying to videotape it.
This pipe that comes down is plan A and B. The only difference is physically they're the same project, but you have to assume how much water the state is going to require that you leave in the stream that's bypassed by that pipe. It's called a bypass flow. Usually it's a ruinous number. At least it has been in the last 10 years, and a lot of projects haven't been built because Agency of Natural Resources, and rightfully so, I'm not arguing that they're not thinking about, habitat environment, but it turns out to be usually a ruinous flow. So when I decided, what's the economics of the project, I had to do 2 cases. One is a lot of water to the state standards, and the other is, if it was mitigated, well, maybe there's less water in the bypass than maybe what they recommend. That requires studies and demonstration flows, and it's a chore. So plan A and B, same physical infrastructure, but 2 different flows that go through the pipe. And I needed another one for comparison. And the other one for comparison is if you were standing on the footbridge in back of Browns, there's another dam and there's an old intake works there. That intake work is probably going to be gone in 20 years just because it's in poor shape. So if one were to come in and do Plan C, this length of the pipe is much shorter than the bypass all along here. So you have less construction costs, you have less water required by the state, and you have another possibility. A, B, C. So those are three. Nothing to do with cost, we haven't gone there yet. So, everybody okay so far? Now comes the, I guess the real tale. And that is, okay, once you know the infrastructure, you know how much it costs. So I did a cost estimate for A, B, and C. Then the next thing is how much water is available. And in the hydro business, I don't know, has anybody seen those USGS flow gauge stations that are, you know, they're all around. Anyways, they have a little monitoring device in it. In probably every 10 minutes, day in, day out, week in, week out. For 75 years, they've recorded flows in different streams in Vermont and throughout the United States. So you go on the web, to the U.S. Geological website, and you look at 75 years of information, in this case, about Blackwater. That's the gauge that tells you what is available. So, as an engineer, I go back in and I manipulate that number, and I can tell you on a 75-year basis what the flow would be coming over the dam, the state dam, for every day of the year with a 50% likelihood. Once you know that, you can come back in, and it's a very simple calculation to determine how much power you would make every day. And you add up days to get weeks, and you add up weeks to get months, and you may add up months to get the annual production that a hydro project would make. So now you have the cost, and you have how much power you can make. And the third ingredient is what the power is worth. So go back and we look to see what's happening in the Vermont Public Service Board. And the Public Service Board has been activated. You may not know, or you might know, is that in 2017, the state of Vermont is going to have what's called a renewable portfolio standard. Anybody hear of this before? The state of Vermont is determined that come the year 2050, that 90% of the power produced for all customers in Vermont by all the utilities will be renewable power. Well, that's laudable, but not a lot of people are stepping forward or developers to make that much renewable power to come up to this 2050 goal. So in order to entice people, the state sets a rate. And not only that, but utility systems create something called renewable energy credits. You guys know about renewable energy credits? If you were a generator that was say a coal producer and you didn't have clean power, you're actually fined and you have to make a payment. But in lieu of making a payment, you can buy renewable energy credits. So today, to give you an idea, is if you're allowed to have credits, where right now you're paying maybe 15 cents for real electricity, that a renewable energy credit's worth 6 cents. So if you think of 6 cents on top of 17 cents, that's a lot of money. And those are the things that make projects more valuable to you. Hence, they get developed so you can meet the state of Vermont's renewable portfolio standard. So there's one way of getting whatever money you're going to put in to build it, how you're going to get that money back out. So renewable energy credits, and then the state has a 25-year contract. If you're a new project in Vermont, and I believe both the North Troy and the Newport projects have what's called a standard contract offer. Standard contract offers today, you sign a 25-year contract, good as gold, and you get paid 12.3 cents a kilowatt hour. for all you people in Barton, or anybody that's interconnected or uses power from Barton Electric, your residential bill is about 17.5 cents. That's what you pay for power. It's about what the state average is. So on one hand, you're paying 17.5 cent retail, and contracts for wholesale power is worth 12.3 cents. So it gets messy. There's lots of different ways. So what I finally decided to do, after I knew how much energy it made, how much power it produced, and then I needed to know what the value of power is. So I created a chart. And I guess it's a good time to
Microphone up close.
It's a disappointing chart.
Oh.
Hey, yo.
Yeah, sorry. I'll move this. Hold on. No, I'm just going to make a change.
Do we have anybody here who works for Barton Village Electric Company? That ever worked for Barton Village Electric Company? Interesting. I'd like to thank Select Board Chair Proto for coming. It was his signature on a contract with Mr. Boeri that permitted all this to happen. So, thank you, Bob. Yeah, indeed. The way that worked is there were municipal planning grants, but unfortunately the village couldn't apply for them because they're not an entity that can apply for such grants with the state. The town of Barton is. And through some very nice cooperation and comedy, the town of Barton said, well, we're not applying this year. We'll apply for you. And did. And we were lucky. And thus we were able to get the best expert in the universe. I'm going to pay for this later, but I'm enjoying it right now.
I'm going to pay for it now if I can't get this from you.
Uh-oh.
Bear with me. Don't watch, you're going to get seasick.
Okay.
No. Wish I could make this a little bigger. Maybe I can. This is the bottom line.
Okay.
Control plus?
No, no, no.
Yeah. Getting there. Getting there.
Everybody familiar with red ink? Knows what it means?
Keep it close.
Remember, I described plans A, B, and C? Those are the physical plans. A, B, C. A, B, and C. With every plan, there's a different set of financial constraints. So, in the case of Plan A, everybody remember that's the one that runs from the state dam down to a project in the back of the Historical Society? That's Plan A. If you took Plan A and you used the speed contract that I just described a minute ago, over 25 years, you'd lose $924,000. Scratch that one, okay? So we're going to go through the process of elimination to see if any of these ABC combinations work for the project. And when you come down to Plan B had a little bit had more water, so it made more power. It cost the same. So instead of losing $924,000, you were only losing $740,000. Scratch Plan B. So then you come down to Plan C. That was the little one. That was the one that went from the bridge by Browns back to the Historical Society. Short run, cost less money, under the speed contract, best plan yet, only loses $685,000. Scratch that plan. So now come back let's come back. The B plans, that is the one that uses a modest amount of water for state purposes and runs from the state dam and back of the Historical Society. That's B. So a variation on that, there's another type of rate, and it's called group net metering. And group net metering with RECs. I told you about RECs just a few minutes ago. So you get money for the energy, 12 cents. You get another 6-cent kicker because you're a renewable energy project in Vermont. And so the rate gets up there and you're getting down there, but you're still losing $486,000. Still not making any sense. So you keep going down until you come to these different combinations. I'm going to confuse the issue a little bit. The best rate available to almost anybody in Vermont is called group net metering. Anybody read about it in the paper? Group net metering is this. Is the state of Vermont really wants to promote small power. So they created this type of rate. And essentially, it makes you your own utility. So if I was a developer and I came into town and I built a hydro project and I filed with the Public Service Board for a group net metering contract, what would happen is this, that they would pay me not 12 cents, they would pay me, not they, but Barton Electric would be forced to pay 17.5 cents, the residential rate. Well, for me, that's great, a project for me, but for you people in Barton, because you're subsidizing group net metering, it's a loss to you. So it makes no sense. You should hope that nobody comes into town that's looking to do group net metering because Barton Electric has to subsidize. Now, is there any way out? It would make no sense for the village to put in a project that used group net metering. It's just, you're kicking yourself in the butt to accept such a thing. Until finally, you come down to B5. B5 is the first one that turns black. But of all the plans that there are, it's the least one ever to succeed. There's almost no chance that this combination of group net metering and RECs and the offset to the town works. So even though it's there and it shows black, the chances of it happening are almost nil. And the reason that is this. This would essentially tie into the rate that Barton Electric pays for the electricity that they buy in the wholesale. If that changes, it's possible that that rate could work. But unfortunately, when their rate drops, residential rates drop, and what do you think the chances are your residential electric rate dropping? Not very good, unless there's some major change in generation technique or some magic solution. So I show this as a winner, but it's almost not likely to happen. Another issue with these numbers is that right now, for some projects, RECs are available, but I'm going to go back to this RPS again for the state of Vermont. They're going to review this, and in 2017, they're going to come up with another recommendation. And odds are that they may not let RECs stay with projects, in which case everybody automatically loses on 6 cents a kilowatt hour. The best thing that I could recommend to the village would be to say, don't do anything now, don't spend any money, wait to see what the state does in 2017. Will they let RECs stay in? Will they adjust some of the other rates? So other than, I guess, on a voluntary basis, if someone in town was interested, or some group, energy committee, trustees would be interested, without spending any money, to go and talk to the state. to see if they could solve the other problems that are up there. Can you release the water rights? You know, can you use their property to get things done? Start a conversation with Browns to see if they're interested in participating where their property is, and especially with the Brick Kingdom and the Crystal Lake Falls Historical Association. They need to be a player in this. If they're not a player in this, then there's no project. So you have things as a small town to look into these matters, not pay a consultant to do it, but you could look into this yourself and wait for 2 years and see what the state decides to do with their renewable portfolio state. There's a lot to chew on here. You know, it's a complicated business, and it's just not a simple thing like, you know, how much concrete do you pour, or, you know, how big a generator. It's much more complicated. And so, at the moment, there's a few wild cards out there. We don't know how it's going to play out. My recommendation to the village is don't do anything, because there's way too much revenue. Whether it will change in the future or not, who knows? That's sort of my general take on things.
Do you want to ask some questions? I think
Whoever make an estimate of what the cost would be for all the activities and going through the internet and all that.
Yes, I did.
repeat the question.
Okay. The gentleman asked, what would be the cost associated? He said Act 250, and this is Act 250 exempt, and I'll tell you why. It's exempt because it's a federal project. And the reason it's a federal project is this. In 1978, under Jimmy Carter, there was an act passed. It was called PURPA, Public Utilities Regulatory Policy. That changed the whole playing field. That forced utilities to pay private developers for energy that they generate. And it also gave private folks the use of the transmission and distribution line, all the poles and wires. So, but because poles and wire are interstate commerce, you need a federal license. So to do this project, if you're going to connect with the grid, which, you know, it's tough to do small standalone projects, you need a FERC license. When you need a FERC license, you need a water quality certificate from Agency of Natural Resources, and zoning, believe it or not, plays no role. Zoning does not play a role because it's preempted as a federal project. Now, I've successfully written 2 FERC applications. Years. It used to be short 2 years. Today, they do have an accelerated permit process. The accelerated today is probably 2 years, but typically it's a 3-year process. In my estimate, by the way, Plan A and B, $1.4 million.
Just engineering.
No, total. Including 1.4 million. The small project is a little over $800,000. Of that number, about 10% is licensing and permitting.
Other questions? I have one. Go ahead. David.
I got a bunch of questions, but the permits and the license, this is a cost, been significant part of the project?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you think $80,000 is noteworthy, it is. So in a $1.4 million project, permits are $80,000. And who does it? $80,000. You go on, you hire a firm to apply to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and they would sort of shepherd it through FERC as well as Agency of Natural Resources. But let me come back. Let me kind of come back to your question. One very important question, and actually it's something that would help you out. If the town was, for whatever reason, the applicant for a license, it would be very helpful, because one of the things that's going to happen is that Agency of Natural Resources, by the way, isn't just fish and water, it's also historic resources. You have a wonderful resource there. It's been studied by University of Vermont. It's got a lot of benefit. in some ways, you can use the fact that maybe the Brick Kingdom somehow, with their agreement, could be enhanced as part of this project. You know, now, who knows? I don't live in town, you know, but if someone starts a dialogue to say, hey, are you guys interested to, you know, if somebody was on the site, you know, burying a penstock, gee, could you pick up some brush or whatever it happened to be. Dialogues are really important, you know, within a community to get your own ducks lined up, to see who can do what, how can you say, how can you advance it.
Another obvious question, when you went through the different scenarios of profitability and cost, the lower you came down the falls, the more profitable it was, or less.
No, not the one. No, the less unprofitable it is.
Less unprofitable. So, is that? I kind of know this area somewhat. This pipe must be very expensive. If it's the same diameter and delivering the same volume of water to the turbine.
Now, let me just answer that. As it turns out, that my project in Heartland has the identical drainage and the identical drop as here. And my project in Heartland is 250 kilowatts, about what I do this. So for 30 years, I have a pretty good feel for what's involved in the size of pipes and all the specifics for a site that's identical to the one at Crystal Lake Falls. I guess, having said that, the problem with not drawing out of the lake, okay? Remember, God's truth, you can't draw the lake down that much. The state says that's it. There's no drawdown of the lake. So I assume, I guess I should make that clear. Zero drawdown of the lake. Whatever spills over the top is what you get. And I should go back to that map if you're below it. But the problem is, you don't draw the lake down. But when you have a reservoir that you can use to regulate turbines, it's very helpful. Plan A and B, even though you can't draw the lake down, you've got, as a matter of fact, I think I said it before, that if you skimmed 1/4 of an inch of water off the entire surface of the lake, and you spilled it at the falls, you could run 40 houses from there. So it doesn't take much water, you know. I mean, did anybody here know if you drew the lake down and then to 1/4 of an inch? You know, and that's just within the tolerance of all the devices that measure what the lake is. So that part is really important, much better than you should draw water from the outlet pond than whatever spills over the top, because you can regulate it better. So it's an equipment issue.
So you need an extra pond, so to speak, for your flywheel.
Yeah, I suppose you could do it.
And this is figured into these different.
Yes.
And one other thing, you lease the water from the state.
Yes.
Do they practically, is it a business, or is it?
You should start a conversation.
Because in my opinion, the state should give it to the power, so that the people can have the power.
Boy, that sounds like a 60s thing.
Didn't they have water power here in the 1860s?
They had water power here in the 1790s. As a matter of fact, just as an interesting side note, I wish I could talk about that. Is everybody happy to get rid of the red ink? You asked about what was here. You asked about what was here. See this building right here? It's gone. In 1870, someone called that the old mill. So usually when that happens, it's a reference back to almost an original foundation building. So this map, even though it may not be used for hydro purposes, is of great interest, I would think, to the town to see the owners and all the details of what was here. So site's been here for a long time, and what people did do then was every one of these dams was its own project. And that's because one was a grist mill, one was an upholstery mill, one was a blower, one was for a blacksmith. The list goes on and on. But they were all individual ones. Today that wouldn't work because you're talking about electric power. It's one thing to have a 10-foot water wheel, and rather than one big wheel turbine, modern turbine down at the building. It does not pay to try to reestablish this with little units along the road. Very expensive.
Yes, Mr. Barber in the back. Ed, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want clarification. We talked about starting a conversation. What state agency do you start the conversation?
I can't hear you.
I need a mic.
Come on up.
Okay.
Just repeat it.
We talked about starting a conversation. What specific state agency do you start a conversation with? And if we're dealing with revenues and waterways, is this an issue the legislature dips its fingers into, or is it strictly handled by bureaucrats?
In the early stages, again, critical item is can you do business with the state of Vermont, lease water rights, lease property? Are they willing to do that? And that's your local rep. That's your interaction with legislature, governor's office, that sort of thing, just to see what you can do. Definitely a local level, not agency of natural resources.
So like
Yep.
Vicky Strong and Sam Young, or
Yeah, they're on state level.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's the start. That's the critical one. If you get by that, then you come to the next obstacle. And the next obstacle would be Agency of Natural Resources. But I would even suggest you don't even want to go there yet. Agency of Natural Resources is understaffed. I just did last year a project for the town of Fairhaven. Same thing. In the village, an old ironworks. Beautiful site, very simple. Had a positive economic outcome. But the town didn't have clear title to it. Just like here. Hydro properties are really difficult to nail down to what ownership is. And the Agency of Natural Resources would not talk to the town of Fairhaven until they got their deeds and their leases organized, and in fact they were the owner. So don't go to A&R, but start a conversation with the Browns and the Brick Kingdom. Those are the ones you have control of. When you go to A&R, it's you're in a different league.
Yeah, hi. I understand that you've been hired for the Crystal Falls project, and we discussed briefly
Yes.
the Charleston project. But I'm just completely at a loss to know what's going on with that. It's owned by the village of Barton, and the last I heard is there were 4 turbines, 3 were broken. And it seems to me, especially with this new information that you're presenting tonight, that maybe we should take a look at 2017 and see which way the regulation falls. But it's just fascinating to me that that's an existing facility, and that I don't hear anybody talking about net metering. I don't hear anybody talking about fixing the turbines and selling the energy back to the state. Can you just comment on that generally as an expert, or it just seems to me that this is an existing facility that's been allowed to deteriorate to the point where the information I had a year ago when I did attend Village Trust DBH was that it had allowed to deteriorate to the point where there were 4 turbines and 3 of them didn't work. And I tried to get involved, but just don't know the answer. But I mean, it's a local question. why, with an existing facility that's built, why, I mean, what's the status, and why isn't there, and this is not a question for you, obviously, but why isn't this power being attempted to be sold, or, I mean, it would fix a great deal of the tax base problem in Barton Village, and also fund Crystal Lake Falls.
The only thing I can say is my mantra, start a dialogue somewhere.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm doing right now. So, and I understand it's not,
Yes.
but it's I mean, can you comment generally on just selling power from a power plant? You know, I did call Velco myself, and I mean, you are the expert. I mean, you are the expert. I'm not doubting your figures, but I was hearing costs of 5 cents and resales of 18 cents, and that's a lot of margin.
Velco is not the entity you want to talk to. The entity that is the umbrella for all the municipals in the state is called DEPSA. And DEPSA is located in the main office. And again, if I'm not mistaken, there's 18 municipal electric authorities in Vermont. Barton, Hyde Park, 21 of them. But the umbrella group is DEPSA. They have a director, they have an administrator, and every town that has a municipal electric authority has a representative for DEPSA. Now, I went back out because it was really important for me to understand how much money that Barton Electric paid on the wholesale. Because that was information that I needed in the study. But all the municipals don't publish their costs, their energy costs. It's a competitive market, private information, and so I couldn't get it. So what I did was I sort of came around it because just a few months ago, the state of Vermont calculated, if you will, a term called avoided cost. Avoided cost means what's the value of power? And the value of power is, well, how much would it cost a utility to build a project? And they take all that information and they spit out a kilowatt hour number, but that's avoided cost. And that avoided cost is what they pay for new projects, for old projects, and that number is about 8 cents. So in my numbers, without any specific information about Barton and what they pay for the power, I calculated at 8 cents based on the recent funding in the Board of Public Service Board. So you want to go to DEPSA, but you definitely want to go in town here and find out who your representative to DEPSA is, and maybe I'm not throwing rocks at anybody. I'm just saying you're obviously looking for a piece of information. Barton Electric or DEPSA are probably places.
How big a factor could that have been to you to get a more accurate figure?
No, with numbers, if it was a marginal case, it would have been, but it's not marginal. This is a red project, nothing marginal about it. So it wasn't critical to me.
And again, I'm just saying, maybe this is, since this seems to be being restarted with this new information, this seems to be the way into it. I mean, possible. And it's an existing facility, and certainly if this starts throwing off money, not only will it help the tax base and the 900 people who live in Barton Village, but it could also help fund this in 2 years.
Fund what?
Fund Crystal Falls.
I don't think the town, I wouldn't recommend that the town fund a project if it was going to be a red project. It doesn't make any sense.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, then forget about Crystal Falls and just work with the plant that exists.
It's my understanding.
And by the way, that's my neighborhood. I'm very interested in that. And I'm also very interested in bringing the businesses that could profit, like that old map with the mills. I just think that with, I'm hoping it can happen.
Yeah, the only thing I can tell you is I understand that the construction company has been retained to repair some of the racks and some of the other facilities at the West Chester. That's all I know is secondhand information.
Thank you.
One. Yes.
Do your estimates include a micro-hydro option?
It doesn't. Well, I have one page talking about micro. What micro-hydro really means is that power is used at the point of production. Usually they're very small projects. The high end of micro would be my Plan C. Plan C is 100 kilowatt battery. I know that I've talked to people that live on just off Water Street, is that elderly? What's the building? Is that elderly? I know that people are very concerned that power goes out. And when power goes off, your respirators or something doesn't work as long as the power is off. And so someone said, gee, could you put something in here that would help? And my answer is, you could, but it's not a very good deal because all these generators, they're called induction generators in this project. When the grid goes down, generators don't generate. You can get a generator to generate when the power is down, but it's a completely different design. It's more involved, it's called a synchronous generator. And to do a small 10 kilowatt one, you'd still need infrastructure. You'd have to get wires to somebody else's building, then you'd have to have a switch an auto transfer switch that would shut off when the utility came back on. It gets complicated. So what I did was, I said in my report, I mentioned about the simple ways of doing micro. You're under micro, we call it pico, which is like 1 to 10 kilowatts. So I gave sort of an overview of what's involved in microhydro. But I did not consider it because my mission really was from the village, and the village isn't looking to install 10 little standalone turbines at the site. So I wanted to address it because I know there was local interest in it, but I didn't calculate cost and change.
This meeting is coming out because the community has been working. Now you're suggesting that somebody goes to talk to the legislators and start a dialogue. That I understand. But who is going to do that? Somebody. And how do they get, where do they get the authority or the, well, authority, I guess it's what I'm saying. How do they get the authority to discuss things with
Do you have an energy committee in town?
Well, the trustees authorized the Barton Hydro re-examination bid. And so that has operated as if it was an official committee and under the Sunshine Act, even though that became somewhat contentious. And so at this point, one of my recommendations to the trustees will be that they consider forming as over 100 communities in Vermont have formed, an energy committee that would continue to carry the role of this. And that would be in the sunshine. The meetings would be announced to the public could participate. The other alternative to that is sort of a rump ad hoc group that's not officially, recognized. They could go that way. But for those of us that would still like to see this, those seem to be the option.
In the town that I live in, we have an energy committee. In the town that I did a feasibility study for, Fairhaven recently, they have an energy committee. Energy committees are typically appointed by a select board. I don't know there's so much the distinction between the village and the town, but typically it's the legislative arm of the town that would make appointments to an energy committee, and they would be responsible to the select board or the trustees, if that happens to be. And that's a really good way to start, because that's the grassroots. If you have an interest in renewable power, an interest in your energy bill and where you want to get power from, it's probably a great place to start.
It's all said and done with market stocks and everything else.
I'm
The
sorry?
bottom line is still, it's not economically feasible.
It is not today. But as I say, I really gave you that example of what things were like. And when I built my first plant and licensed it in 1984, it was great. And 25 projects were built. 1988, everything disappears. It disappears for 20 years. And then all of a sudden, it swings back because of the price of power, because of global warming. Crystal Falls isn't going anywhere. Okay? What's coming and going though are the rates. And the rates are coming and going because of world conditions and all that. So what you have to do is you have to be patient. Because we've got to wait. If you're interested, wait till the ducks line up. That's what I'm recommending. You don't want to hire someone like me to go to the legislature. You don't want to pay my time on something that may lose out. This is your community, and this is something that should come from you, volunteers. It's how it best works.
You want to talk about the 75% standards coming in. You talked a little bit about the 2017. You want to talk about the next one, 2025?
No, the 17 is going to tell most of the story.
Right.
And
But then
it's 2050. You got to wait till 2017.
How much of a problem was it to try and understand, because Barton Village Electric Company is owned by the village and operated by the village, to try and understand how to utilize some of the net metering and RECs with that. And you should know that people in the village, and I don't live in the village, I live in the town, the people in the village feel that they have very expensive water, poor quality water, very expensive electricity, that people are discouraged from buying or operating either businesses or houses in the village because of these high costs. It doesn't make any sense to think about, a net metering project that the village does in order to try and equalize or lower for the people in the village some of these like electrical costs, and what kind of grant would it take? Mr. Rubin, Matt Rubin, at the Renewable Energy Conference last fall in Burlington, whispered to me, "I think you can get grants, for this program."
I think the grant one is the easier question to answer. I should have pointed it out on the profit and loss sheet. I ran one case, and it was one of the better cases, and I assumed in that case that somehow you found $250,000 free money to put into the project, and it still came out. You probably need to find a free $500,000 for it to start making sense. And but wait a minute, you really need a Barton to forget group net metering. It just doesn't work because you're a municipal electric authority. If you're in Green Mountain territory, Green Mountain service territory, Green Mountain absorbs it, they're 75% of the load of the state. And actually, Green Mountain Power benefits because, remember I talked about that standard offer contract for 12.3 cents? The reason the standard contract doesn't work here is because the rules of that game is projects don't keep the RECs. The RECs go back to for the utilities. And they go back in a prorated fashion. If Green Mountain Power is 75% of the demand in the state, memory serves me, Barton Electric is 0.05%. So, sure, maybe there's $2, $3, $4 million in RECs that are kept by the utilities. You get 0.05% of it, a few $100. Group, and that metering does not work for Barton. So,
Any other questions?
Yeah, I mean, back to the Charleston therapy, again, if that was added together, you're just saying it wouldn't,
No.
it just,
West Charlton is a base load, okay? You in Barton, your annual load is 13 million kilowatt hours, okay? 13 million kilowatt hours has got to come from somewhere. Of the 13 million, I think, memory serves me, that West Charleston is 3 million kilowatt hours. Okay? That's your base load. That's the only power that you make that you don't divide. Okay? Now, I know, I hear everybody say the plant doesn't run well, it doesn't make that much power. Well, you know, maybe somebody has to make it. There's no comment on that per se. But it's the base load. It's not a group net metering. It's not eligible for standard offer contract. So you're stuck with it to offset what you have to buy. The difference between the 3 million and the 13 million is what's on the spot market.
so I'm just trying to understand. So we have this entity that really doesn't seem to be serving interests. And it's more than that, it's starting to stand in the way, seemingly, of lots of great things. Okay.
Honey badger.
Is there only one price on Rex? I think Bill Scully, when he was here, said that he's selling his Rex down at his Bennington project to Rhode Island.
Yes, and you know what's going to happen in 2017?
No.
There was a ruling that said, all of a sudden, Connecticut especially said, we're not going to buy Vermont Rex from Vermont projects anymore because they called it double dipping. So finally they said, okay, we'll buy them until 2017. And in 2017, his Rex are gone, okay? Because he's going to have to live in a wreck Vermont.
Which is a big difference.
Which is a big difference.
10 cents a kilowatt.
Now, the other thing is, Rex are fickle too. And you know, they start at 4 cents and then they go 6 cents. They're much more stable than Pleasant. Well, by the way, in the report is going to end up in a week's time or so online. But coming back to your question, or the question about what Barton pays for power, that's really set in the spot market. And the crazy thing about the spot market, and this is what some of us were being paid is, the spot market is already linked. The federal government links New England as one transmission line. And so there's an organization, it's located in Connecticut, and the price of power is set, catch this, every 5 minutes. There's a website, and you can go on that website, and you can see you can watch every 5 minutes as to what the value in Connecticut, Maine, and Vermont. You can see what the distribution, it's the neatest, as a matter of fact, I don't want to show it, but I have a snapshot of 1 5-year gap. The interesting thing about the spot market is, wouldn't you think if you were generating power, somebody would always pay us something? Even if it was a 10th of a cent? Well, a new rule came into effect, but sometimes there's too much power. And you actually, for generating power, you have to pay the utility to accept it. That's a market you don't want to be in, because if you go to your bank and they say, well, how much are you going to get paid? And you say, well, I'll tell you in 5 minutes, what we're going to get paid. It's a crazy system. So what the state of Vermont tries to do is they try to look at averages from the spot market, and then work that into how they develop a contract, like this 8-cent contract between unions.
So you said something very important, that this is going to be shared with the world. The final T's crossed and I's dotted next week on bartonhydro.org, which is the website that was set up, for this project to share, and you'll see Governor Shumlin on there affirming Barton Hydro, Senator Sanders, but you will also see, in addition to those wonderful old studies, this wonderful new study, although it's a little bit bitter in some places, but as we chew on it, particularly in the year 2017, the promise is it might get sweeter.
To answer your question, I can see you're a little skeptical about it.
I hate wasting money.
And you know what? I'm there. But I'm only telling you, you got to wait till it's there. You got to just keep kind of feel and watch what the state's doing. You got to watch and wait to see how it happens. Crystal Lake Falls isn't going anywhere. It's always going to be there. The drop's going to be there. The water's going to be there. Can you use it? Can you get it? And what's the state? Or what's the value of the water, the energy?
Well, if there are no more questions, let's thank Mr. Boeri for coming.
I don't want to say I'm not going to get paid for this, because it's really fun.
Woo!
Yeah, okay. Not one goddamn word.
Yeah, I'll see you later.